Everyone, this is Merc from WeCode, and today I'm going to be teaching you how I do the mockups and the prototypes that I was talking about in the first lesson. So this is what I linked in the first lesson for the first mockup. It pretty much just tells you what I want it to look like overall. So it'll tell you the approximate widths and like pretty much the colors that I plan on using, or at least the getting the shapes down. Um, this is what it turns out like, and this is what I'm going to be showing you how to make today. So you can see that I have different elements that I want to incorporate. I know where I want to put my C box. If you don't want to include a C box, that's totally fine. I think I've already mentioned this in the lesson. I know it's more popular to use just the Discord icon now, which is totally fine. But for those who still want C boxes, I will be putting a push sidebar into this mockup because that's what I already did. Plus, I think it looks really nice. So, I mean, I don't know, it's not a big deal for me. But alright, let's get started. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to be doing is starting a brand new file. I'm going to be doing this in Photoshop because this is the tool that I normally use. I know that in the lesson I did mention a couple other alternatives that were free, like Adobe XD and Figma if you use a student email, I believe. So those are always options. I think they have similar features to this. I've honestly never used either of those, but I think a lot of people do, and they seem to be having a good time with it, so that should be fine. I think I read today in the Discord that some people were using images from, or when they were using Figma and Adobe XD, so I think that should be totally fine to use. If you're having issues with it, not getting the colors or whatever pictures that you want, that's totally fine. You can totally translate that over when you do the actual coding. So don't worry about it now if it's not exactly what you want, because you can totally edit your images later. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to be doing is File, New, or you can do Control New. I like to usually title my stuff here just so that I don't have like a bunch of untitled dash whatever number files floating around or tabs. I usually like to do 1280 by 720 just because it's not too big and it's also not too small. I have a lot of friends with screen sizes that are about 1100px, so that's not, too big. And I have a lot of other friends who have just absolutely ginormous um, monitors, so it's just ridiculously huge, and sometimes it can get a bit confusing. So I think 1280 by 720 is a pretty good way to start out your mockup. You can always upscale it or downscale it later on, and you can make, well, if you want to do responsive, you can totally do responsive as well. I pretty much, for the most part, I tend to stick around the same size just because I don't like to play with the formatting too much. So I'm going to be calling this, you can just call it whatever site mockup, or pretty much whatever you want. I just like to make sure mockup is in the name so that it's easy to find later, especially because I always save it as a PSD, which means it's a file that you can come back to and edit later if you want to play around with some things without actually messing up your site or touching your coding. So I'm just going to call this nerve mockup. All right, so this is pretty much what you're going to come across if you just selected the plain white background, which is what I usually do. Now, I don't like to do just plain white usually. I do like FA, 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 or FB, 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 just because they're just slightly off-white. So we're going to be doing FB because that's one of my favorite hex codes. You can just use the paint bucket tool for this. This is fine. The background is usually just locked anyway, so that it doesn't really go anywhere, so you don't really have to worry about it. Alright, so the first thing that I did was put in a top bar and a sidebar. The top bar usually runs along the top, obviously because it's called the top bar, but it displays pretty much information regarding the user is what's usually displayed there. You can style this however you want. Same thing with the sidebar. You can put your user information there, or you can just put the C box there and some site information. Whatever you want, really. Alright, so these are the colors that I'm going to be working with. You can totally pick whatever colors you want to work with. It doesn't really matter. It's personal preference. So I'm just gonna be taking the colors off of this mockup that I already made. I picked the colors on the fly when I was just doing this earlier, so I already have my colors selected for me. When doing the main part of your skin and your mockup, I would probably try to stick towards more neutral colors rather than going too crazy. So like this very light gray and this very light gray and like these very light grays here, those are totally fine. You can change them as much as you want. You can make them a little bit lighter, a little bit darker, and it'll still look nice. It's not too difficult for people to look at for long periods of time, especially when you have accent colors like this green mixed in. So that's totally fine. If you want to do a darker skin, you can totally go ahead and do that. I probably wouldn't go to black, like just straight black. I would definitely mess around with like dark grays, and pretty much just don't just do straight white or straight black because sometimes it's a bit too much and it gets more difficult to work with those colors as time goes on. But you can never have too many shades of gray when you're working with skinning, and I don't know, it's very flexible, so I enjoy using them, and I think it's a great idea to just keep using them. All right, so I'm going to be using this kind of grayish color for my background-ish color. Not for like the main background, but just for the like the sidebar and the wrapper. This is called the wrapper right here. It holds all of your content, so that's always very important to have. Um, I think this color is nice. I mean, it's a bit darker than the FB, so you'll be able to see that when I move back over to the mock-up. I'm just taking all the colors over now because that way it'll be easier for us. And then let's get this dark border color if I can find it. Where is that? Oh, that's not it. This one is it. All right, D8 it is. Super, super, super quick. I know I keep rambling throughout this video, but I feel like this is very important. When you are making your mock up, and if you do it in Photoshop like I do, I don't know if Adobe XD and Figma have this kind of organization, but definitely organize your stuff into different folders just so that it's a lot easier to work with. I forgot to make one of these a folder, which was the background one. I'll do that now and then label it background because that's what it is. And that way it's super easy to read everything. I'm just gonna delete that later. But here it's super easy to read everything. You know what you're gonna be editing. So like the index, all of that. Sidebar is gonna disappear. Top bar, and your background. So we already know that the sidebar that we're making is going to be 200 pixels, and then the main part of our content, the wrapper, is going to be 1000 pixels. I don't believe I recommended anything higher than 1100 pixels because, like I said before, a lot of people have really small screens, and I wouldn't really recommend making anything way too big. You end up with a lot of white space usually if you do it way too big, and it usually just looks really empty. A lot of people can make that work, and that's totally fine. If that's something that you want to do, go for it. But keep in mind that not all of your users are going to have huge screens. And maybe it's just not going to fit for them. All right. So for the mockup, my sidebar is actually going to be 202 pixels just because of the way the Photoshop border is. So I always go whatever the width I want of the object, so 200 pixels for the sidebar, plus however much the outline is on each side. So I'm going to have a 1 pixel outline on the entire element. So that's going to be 2 pixels or 1 pixel on each side, which means 2 pixels in total. So I'm going to make it 202 pixels wide. Now, I'm not sure how it is, again, for Figma and Adobe XD. And if it doesn't work like this, that's totally fine. You can just make it that approximate um, width and then add like a single line element just to create a border if that's what you're looking for. And then for height, mine it's going to be following the same logic, so it's going to be 722. That's going to go here. I'm going to put it one off the edge because I want to hide that extra border. And then this sidebar is actually going to be this color that we already selected from our previous mockup. And then I'm going to go to the shape tool again, go to stroke, change this to 1. And then I'm going to make my border color, I think it's this color, this darker gray color, which is D8, D8, D8. I don't know if you guys can tell, but obviously I love repetitive hex codes because it's easy to remember. All right, so when you do that, it's going to create this, your sidebar with the outline. So right now it's 201 pixels. I like to do this because this is just the way that it works in HTML and CSS as well. Whenever you add a border to something, you're adding the width as well. So it's not just the border is going to be inside, it's going to be outside. So you have to account for that. I know it's just a graphic, it's just a mock-up, but I like to be as precise as possible when I work with these. So make sure that you move it 1 pixel off to the left if your sidebar is going to be on the left side, just because then you don't see the outline on this side like you do on this side. The next thing that we're going to be doing is putting in the top bar. So we're going to grab those colors, this light green, and then what I do for my accent color is I pretty much just pick my main color and go a bit darker. So something like this would totally work. I think it's the one I picked is somewhat similar. It's a bit lighter, so that's fine. All right, and then how big can I make this? Let's check. All right, so about 80 pixels, which is pretty good. So you're going to be wanting to do about the same thing here. You're going to do 82 pixels because of the height thing again with the board. Wait, no, just 80 pixels. I lied. Because I'm not going to add a border to this, so it's going to be just 80. And then whatever width you want, it doesn't have to be like exact for that because it's just going to hang off the edge anyway. For the sidebar, I like to make it exact just so I know and I can center elements inside of it. So for this top bar, I want to add these rounded square edge or images or rounded square boxes so that I can add my icons in them. I know that I want the user profile in there. So when you click on the name right here, it'll take you to that person's profile. To the left, I want either the avatar or I want the C box or the sidebar collapsing or the link to the Discord if you don't want the sidebar, which is totally fine. But I think that adding different shapes helps to accentuate things and doesn't make things so boring. If you want to just use squares, that's totally fine. I love squares too. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to the sidebar and you're going to left click and hold it down. And then you're going to go to the rounded rectangle tool. And the great thing about this is that you can choose the radius you want it to be so that you can translate this into coding later on. So I'm just going to make it like about 40 pixels, I guess. So I'm going to click this link tool to make sure they both change when I do this. So they're both 40. Double click it to change the color and then select the darker color. Now, this is my sidebar, so that's what I'm going to label it as. And then this is my top bar. And this is my top bar box 1. Now, if you click both of these, and you can do that by pressing Shift or Control and clicking on both of them, and then go up to the top here and click on these alignments just to make sure that these are aligned within the center of each other, so that we have this perfectly between the top and the bottom, because that's how I want it to look, so that's how it's going to be coded, and I want it to look very nice. Now, I'm going to be using, let's see, at least 3 more boxes. So you can just press Control C. Well, I think you can press Control J. Yeah, okay, you can press Control and J. And then if you hold Shift and drag it across, it'll stay at the same height that you already have it at. And you can position it wherever you want. I want to keep it, personally, I like to have it equal spacing all around, just so that it looks a bit neater. So I'm just going to make 3 of these, because that's what I have on my mock-up. These don't have to be exact. You just want to make sure that when you are making something like this, it won't look too crowded if you have to add more. Like, I know you have to have your inbox and your alerts and your login, log out, and then your settings, because you want your name to go to your profile. So just keep in mind, you want to make sure there's enough space for all of your links. If you would just want to have something like this and have like a collapsible thing, like if you click on one of these and a box opens, that's totally fine. Just make sure that you're trying to account for everything. Now, I already know what font I wanted to use for this, so I'm going to be using Intro, which is this pretty font right here. You can pretty much pick any font that you want, because I will be teaching you in a later lesson how to upload and install custom fonts. So if you want to use a Google font, that's totally fine. Go ahead and do that. If you want to use a font that you found on the internet, go ahead and do that. Alright, so let's see, intro bold. I'm just going to copy this and then drag it over here. And then you want to do the same thing. You're going to hit Control and then the top bar layer, and then this alignment layer again so that they're centered. And then I'm just going to press Shift and then move it left. That way you can see it easily. Now, what I did here was I went to Layer, Layer Style, and then I clicked on Stroke. And then I made it that darker color again. Or, no, I made it a darker color than this. So you go up here and you can't really see it too well. It's a bit of a light green, so you want to go a little bit darker. But you might not want to make it gray, because then it does stand out a lot more, but it doesn't really match. It kind of looks like it's just out of place. And you don't want to make it black, because it definitely looks out of place. Or like a lime green or anything lighter than the sidebar color, because it'll just blend in. So just make it nice and dark around the same color as this. And then I only did it 1 pixel. I'll be teaching you how to do this outline, so don't worry about it. We'll worry about it in the future. And then hit OK. And now you have a cute little outline for the name. Now, really quick, I'm just going to make a folder. You can do that by scrolling down here to the folder part. And then just Shift and click and drag everything that you want into the folder. I'm going to name the folder Top Bar, just so that I know what it is. Perfect. If I click on it, everything goes away. Alright. So next thing we're going to be making is the sidebar. So we can press on this arrow, and then everything will disappear. Like magic. And then we're going to create another folder and drag the sidebar into that and call it Sidebar. So I'm going to be using this darker gray to represent the C box. I'm just going to be using a rectangle for this. You don't have to be too precise about this, just because it's something that is not there right now. You can kind of play around with this when you get it, so you don't have to worry about it too much if you don't want to. Let's see. I'll just, like, for now, I'll make it like 160. And that looks fine. And then if you press Shift and select both of them and hit this center button, it'll align it in the middle of that left and right. What is that? Horizontally, yeah. And then I'm going to want more text up here. You can add whatever you want to the sidebar. If you just want the C box, that's totally fine. If you want navigation links, go ahead and add them in there. You can pretty much do anything you want to your sidebar. I'm just putting that up there. For mine, I'm going to put, let's close that, put that. I'm going to use intro again, and then pretty much just style my text the way I want it to be styled. So I'm going to copy this layer, by pressing J and moving it down to the sidebar. And then I'm going to line it in the center of that again. And we're going to say, oh, I'm going to align it to the center so the text goes up from the center. Oh no, that's not what I wanted. All right. Change it to like Wisteria, Massachusetts. Now, as you can see right now, you can't really read this. It's really difficult to read. So you don't want to do light colors on top of other light colors unless you have like a really nice outline. But this outline obviously doesn't match, and white on top of a gray is just really hard to read. So what I'm going to do is change the color to this nice green. And then I can change the stroke to, I think I'm going to leave it as this darker green. I think I might be able to do, yeah, different shades of green if I wanted to, but I'll just leave it as this. You can change the font size for this, just to make sure that it fits really nicely. But it's kind of hard to read, so we'll see how it is without that. And it's alright, I guess. You can style this however you want it to be styled. Let's see how I have it styled here. It's alright, I guess. We can always come back to this later. Maybe we'll make it all lowercase and a bit bigger. There we go. I like that. Change the letter spacing, the kerning, something like that. Yeah, I don't know. I think that looks nice. I have no idea actually. I don't know. I'm really picky. Let's do negative and then make this bigger. Maybe a darker green. Yeah, that looks fine. It's just a mock-up. I know. Okay. And then you can add any other information that you want. Usually when I have something in lowercase like this, I want to add something under it, like, what do I have? Autumn 2019. So, I'm going to do that here. This is going to be called your title, and then you're going to make a subtitle. So just write whatever you want it to be, like Autumn 2019. I'm make that a lot smaller, and then I'm going to space the characters out a lot more. And I'm not going to be using green, because you don't want to use your accent colors all in one go. You can make it a nice gray. There we go, 777777. I'm going to line these layers together by clicking on both of them while holding shift and then hitting this alignment up here. And I'm going to move these closer together, just like that. Alright, now one thing I want you to note is that Wisteria is in all lowercase and Autumn 2019 is in all uppercase. This might just be like a personal thing, but I prefer to have the two texts kind of separated like that. I think if it's all uppercase, it's too much like, oh no, someone's yelling at me. And if it's all lowercase, like if this was lowercase, it's just, it might be more difficult to read because the text is so small. You want to make sure that everyone knows like it's a subtitle, and if it's just like a bunch of lines of this, it's too much information. So you just want to be like quick snapshot of what it is. It's Wisteria in Autumn 2019. Alright guys, so we're done with the sidebar for now. I'm going to leave it like this. You can totally add anything that you want to it. I honestly just leave it like this because when I'm doing the actual coding, I pretty much just do whatever I want with it. I don't always plan what I do with the sidebar. If you want to, that's fine. It's just not what I do, and this process, or this video is mostly just the process that I go through. So we're gonna move on to the background. So I actually really love working with backgrounds, and I go to this awesome site called Unsplash, and I pretty much just search for whatever I want because there's no penalties to using any of these images, and they have tons of great images. I picked like green, like just a color, and I picked not this image, but an image very close to that, just by scrolling down a lot. Like this image looks really nice. You could use any of these images for like your background or your header, which that's just what I do now because I love this site so much. So I usually use these 3 PSDs for it. Index, there we go. But without the coloring, it looks like this. Totally fine. I just like it with the coloring because it makes it a bit darker, a bit grungier. So I'm going to be dragging these over to my new mockup. And I'm going to be setting it for the very bottom layer on above background. And then positioning it the way I want to. So press Control T, and then you can resize the shape of your image. You definitely want to do this. I usually scale it to the size of my mockup because every time I use a background image, I always use background size cover. So it will always resize the image to whatever is in my viewport. So I know that this is what it's going to look like. And it's not like 100% accurate, but I think it does a pretty good job. So when you're done transforming this image size, just press enter and it'll save that image size for you. I'm going to be doing the index. From this mockup, you can tell that it's going to be 1000 pixels wide. And I'm going to want to do the same thing where this is going to be this F2, F1, F1. And then I believe the border is D8, D8, D8. So, whoops. All right, let me show you how I did that. So, click the rectangle, and then just click. Like, don't drag it and create a shape. Just click, and then you can enter how wide you want it to be. So this is going to be 1002 because if you guys remember, I was talking about how I wanted to add a border. So it's going to add 2 pixels to that. And I want it to be around the right height. I mean, around the right width. For height, it doesn't really matter. You just want it to go off of the page, so that it's as accurate as you can possibly make it. So like, I don't know, we'll make this 1000 as well. That is fine. I'll drag it in here. You don't have to be like super precise about where you place it in here, but I would try to make it even around all sides, like right here, just because that would be the most accurate, and I think it looks the best anyway. So to add the border, make sure you click on the shape tool, or the shape in the layer, and then click on the shape tool on the left-hand sidebar, if that's where your sidebar is. And then go up here and change your stroke to 1, and then change the color. See, D8, 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 I believe that's correct. That should be fine, I think that's right. Yeah, perfect. Alright, so that is done. We know what this looks like. We know how much space that takes up on a 1280 by 720 screen. But this is exactly why you don't really want to make your wrapper larger than 1100 pixels unless you plan on making a version of your skin that's for smaller screen resolutions, because this is already taking up a lot of space. You can barely even see the background because it's so big. I usually make mine by default like probably 900 to 950. If I make it bigger, it's just because I want to add a bunch of things. But I do, specifically for WeCode, make different versions of the skin so that sometimes they're a bit bigger, sometimes a bit smaller. But I always have different options. So the next thing we're going to be doing is, I know that I want to add a header in here. So the trick with headers is that you don't want to just stick the image in there, because then it just looks kind of out of place. So if I open my index tab, I have all of these layers. Let's close this. Okay. So where is my, okay, this is my header layer. So what you usually want to do is put your header inside of a different container. So I'm going to be using, well, it doesn't really have to be a container, I guess, but when you use, because you could just do like a border around here that's kind of large, and then an outline if you really want to. But you have to pay attention then to the positioning because the outlines don't always follow um, like regular positioning. So you might have to adjust that along with every other element. So I just like to make containers because it makes everybody's life so much easier. Just trust me on that one, okay? All right. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is let me figure out how big I made this. All right, 950 by 400. So we're going to create another rectangle. So 952 by 400 because I want that border. And then you're going to want to press Control and hit both of these and align them this way. You can't really see it. That's fine. We'll just make it a bit darker for now. That's not going to be the permanent color. But you see how it's not even on all sides? That definitely bothers a lot of people, and it for sure bothers me. So what you're going to do is just move it down until you think it looks about even. Because when you actually code it, it will be about even. See, that looks about fine-ish. That looks fine. All right. So let's see. The border is going to be the D8, 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 which is totally fine. That way it'll match everything else. Change that to 1. And this is the border. All right. So now you just have this big gray box. And it's a bit dark. So what you're going to want to do is double click on this shape again. And then maybe make it the same color as this C box shape here, just because it's a bit of a darker gray, but it's not too dark. If you click off of your layer, you can actually see the outline. And that actually looks pretty good. You can see where the shape is clearly defined. And it doesn't look like the border meshes in way too much with the actual color of the background. So that's awesome. Next thing that we're going to be doing is making the actual background image or your header. So, see, it's going to be, if I want to add padding, so like this will be 920 by 370 because of padding, because this is 952 by 400. So that means that I took off about 30 pixels, I think. Yeah. So 15 pixels of padding between the outside and where I want the image to be. All right, so we're going to be making that right now. It's going to be, what was that, 950? So it's going to be 922. And then 470? Could be wrong, might be wrong, most likely am wrong. 370. All right, so then you're gonna align these again, and that looks good. And then just move, oh, okay. So the cool thing about this is that once these are aligned, you can move them in a group together. You can call that header. And then, because this is the wrapper, just click both of these again, hit align, and then they're perfectly centrally aligned. So I'm just going to make a new folder for this and call it the index, and put them all in here just so that we know what they are. All right, so this is going to be the actual header image. This is going to be the header container. Now, you can go and select an image that you want. Again, you can use Unsplash, which is what I did. You can color the image, which is also what I did. I used the same PSDs about, and then I'm just going to drag the image over. So there's this really cool thing about using Photoshop and it's called masking. So if you are on a Windows computer, I don't know the shortcut for a Mac if you're using a Mac, But on a Windows computer, you can hold Alt, or you can, yeah, hold Alt, and then hover over the border between your image and the shape you want it to mask. So I can just do that, and then the image will only be shown in the shape that I already made. And then you can position it wherever you want, and it'll perfectly clip the image. So don't worry about that. You don't have to worry too much about cropping then, which is nice. This looks about fine. That's totally fine. I didn't really pick this image for too many reasons other than just because there's a person in it, and I think most banners have people in them. So that's why that's there. But I highly recommend using Photoshop if you can, just because of that awesome masking thing. If this tool is available, or if something similar is available in Adobe XD or Figma or any other of the mockup tools that you're using, please let me know, and I will totally edit a comment or something in from either in the lesson or make an announcement about it, just so that other people know it's there. Now, we're going to be moving on to adding this actual text part and some features that are pretty much on every site. I'm going to be adding in a title. I mostly like to do this in using HTML and CSS rather than just putting text over an image in like Photoshop or whatever program you use to make your banners, because then it's more flexible. You can change it whenever you want to, and you can position it however you want to, so you can add different elements as time goes on. So I'm going to be using Intro, which is the same font that I've been using pretty much throughout all of this so far, and be calling it Nerve. So I'm just going to type that, Nerve. Alright. So, do I like it like this, or do I like it like this? I don't know. You can totally decide for yourself. For the mock-up, I'm just going to leave it like this because I can totally change it later if I want to. Now, when it comes to your titles for your site, a lot of people prefer to have it like the color of the text or your accent, which is totally fine, or the darker accent. Either is fine. But most people have them stylized no matter what, so that it's like an outline so that it's readable. Like that. It might be a little bit difficult to read just because of the color of the background or something, which is totally fine. Then you can always change it to white, which I think is, for the most part, usually quite readable. And then just change the stroke color to like the green or something that helps it stand out. Whatever you really want. I might stick with the green. That's totally fine for me for now. I think if I don't like it, I can change it here, or I can change it when I actually get back to the coding part. So the nice thing about the mockup is you can put it wherever you want, and if you really like it, you really like it, and if you don't, you can totally change it. So I'm going to be putting mine about here, same position as in the mockup. Now, I have been doing pretty much exclusively Harry Potter sites, so I don't know if there's always a subtitle for people's headers, because I always put, well, like for Harry Potter sites, you usually put like what year it is and then what era it is. So that's what I'm gonna put probably. Or I guess subtitles if people have other subtitles, like if you have enough. And I know what I plan to do with this, so I'm gonna change this to a darker gray and make this quite small. I'm going to character tab and then change the spacing between them again just to make them look nice. Alright, so I know that it's difficult to read, but if you add like a small banner, a solid color behind them, you will be able to read it much better. Just going to line them together. Spacing, it's fine. It's totally fine. You can just leave it like this. You can move it wherever you want. I think that looks nice. All right. So that is done. And now I'm going to move that into a folder of its own, just so that I don't mess with it again. Now, I'm going to be adding this triangle thing. I'm going to show you how to do that in Photoshop. Again, it's going to be using clipping masks, so I don't know if this is going to be available in other mockup generators. Yeah, I don't know if that's the right word. Mockup programs. So I'm just going to take a square, create a rectangle, make sure it's the same color as this, my main accent color, and just make that whatever size I want. I'd rather make it longer than wider. Now, when this is selected, press Control and T if you're using Windows, and then if you hold Shift, it'll go at specific angles so that it'll be easy to remember when you're transferring over to coding. Like if you want it to be 15 degrees or negative 15 degrees, it'll say that up here, and then it'll go negative 30 and 45 and just keep going in increments of 15. I'm probably just going to do 30. I think that's enough. I want this to cover enough of the header but not be too much. And then drag this layer down until it's right over the image layer that you used. And then hold Alt again and then click. And then it'll be masked so that it's only inside of this box. Now, I like to have a little bit of transparency between this just because I think it looks really cool. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. I just prefer it. But if you're going to change the opacity of this or change it to make it look more transparent, make sure that you change the fill and not the opacity. I'll show you why in just a second. So just want to click the rectangle tool, add one to it, and then you can add a border. It can be that dark green, maybe make it a bit darker just so it stands out a bit more. That's fine. So if you click on the rectangle tool and you change the opacity, the whole thing is gone. Like the whole thing changes its opacity, including that border. But if you leave that at 100% and just take the fill down, it only changes the fill so that the border stays the same color, which is how the coding will be. So that way it'll be easy to transfer that over. Just keep that in mind when you're doing this so you don't accidentally change your HTML elements to opacity 0 or opacity 25, because that'll change everything inside of that element when you code it. So that's mostly just like a methodology thing, just so that you remember. I'm going to change the border to white just because I think it'll look nicer. Or maybe a little bit off-white. Yeah, see, that's fine. I usually like to keep this at a nice round number, so like 75 or anywhere between 50 and 75 is pretty good usually. Now, we're going to be moving on to the staff images. And up here I used rounded squares with 10 pixels of roundness, if that's what it's called. So that's what I'm going to be using again. Nope, that's not the right one. So make sure you go to your sidebar, hold it, the shape tool, and then select rounded rectangle tool. And then you hold shift and drag. It'll create, it'll make sure that it's even on all sides. And then I'm going to make it probably 60. I don't remember how big I made this here. I'll make that a bit bigger, I guess. So like maybe 80. Yeah, that's fine. So I usually do these one at a time. Let me change this to text. So that I can easily move it or just duplicate it and move it down. So I'm going to change this color actually to the darker green just to make it stand out a bit more again. I'm gonna go to the border, change to 1. Maybe I'll make it that white outline. Yeah, that looks fine. I'm gonna press Control J because I want to duplicate this layer so that the shape and the proportions stay the same. And I want to give it probably a 10 pixel border. So that means this is gonna go down by 10. Well, 5 on each side. Hit Shift, click both of those, and align them vertically and horizontally. Maybe 10. Maybe 10. We'll see. So 60? Or maybe that's too much. This is why we have mockups, so you can play with them. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe I don't like the border. I don't know. We'll see. Alright, so you can go ahead and select a staff image. I already have one, so that's the one I'm going to be using. Drag it over. This can just all be the same. This is only like a test image to make sure everything looks nice. Drag it over to right above your inner rounded rectangle. Hold Alt again, and then click. Make sure it's masked, and then you can move it around. Do you like that? Do you not like that? I don't know. It's up to you. I might actually change this to a white gray. I don't know. What did I have it up here? I think, okay, that was smaller as well. So maybe we'll change that back to 70. And then align those again. Yeah, I think that looks better, I guess. There we go. Okay. I don't think I like that white. I think I will make that a bit darker gray. I don't know. We'll see. You can definitely just play around with these. It's completely up to you. Yeah, that's fine. Totally fine. Alright. Well, I'm joking. That bothers me. That so bothers me. I like to try to make it as accurate as possible just because I know the colors that I use in here are probably going to be the colors that I use on the actual site. Okay, yeah, I like that color. So I'm going to duplicate this color. Oh, well, what do you know? It's C4, C4, C4. I have a problem with duplicating hex codes. There we go. Look great. Now, I'm going to be doing. I just wanted to make I just want to make it a little bit fun. So we're gonna make a new folder for this and call it staff. Move them in here, and now we're gonna be creating the staff names and the staff titles. You can change this to just be links to staff character profiles, which is totally fine. For this mockup, I think I'm just gonna be doing it to make the name of the person and then adding the staff title, because when you click on the name, I'm planning to have it be a modal. So when you click it, a box comes up and it'll say like, it'll list all the characters, it's all about me and like contact information. So that's what I'm planning to do. You can pretty much style this however you want. So the name is going to be Draco. I'm going to align this to the left so that it's easy to work from the left. Make this, what color did I make it here? White. Alright, that's fine. And then you can play with the font, change the spacing to make it closer together, make this font bigger. I'm going to layer style, stroke. I'm going to have it be that dark green because I like that. Maybe a bit darker green. Yeah, that's pretty good. See, just if you don't like what you see, just make the color a bit darker. That's like the trick, alright? Now, this is pretty readable. If you want, you can make the spacing a little bit less. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Alright. So I like to make it pretty much as far away from the top as it is from the left. So that should be fine. And then, because this is all lowercase, I'm going to make my subtext all uppercase again. So what did I call him here? Lost cat. That's true. Alright, so lost cat. All uppercase. And then it was pretty small. And then a dark gray. You're probably going to want to use this color again. If I can get it. There we go. And then character. And then because the letters are so close together in the title, the subtitle can be very spaced out, and that's not dark enough gray, so I can make it a bit darker. There we go. Just pay this is just gonna be about different shades of gray. You can totally play with however you want. And then you can line this to the left or the center or the right. It's completely up to you. I'm gonna align it to the left because that's just the way I like it. And I'm gonna make the spacing about even on all sides. Now you have one staff portion done. So you can duplicate that again. Did I duplicate that? What did I just do? Oh, I created a new folder. Okay, that's gonna be the staff section. Move that in there. Duplicate it. Drag it down, holding shift so that it stays in the same space. And then Control J, drag down again, and then move it so it's the same. Now I'm going to click the staff section and move it down together. I know that this is a little bit off spacing wise, that should be good. And then move it more this way so that it's about even. There, that looks good. And then you can change these names just to make sure that spacing is pretty okay with whatever it is. What did I say? Oh, Blaze. And he is the coding whiz. And Pansy is the content queen. Whoops. Now you see, that doesn't really work, the spacing, because it's so, it doesn't really work with the drop-down letters. So what you can do is make sure all of these are open. Where are they? Okay. Hold Control, click on Content Queen in the layer section, scroll down, hit Coding Whiz, and then scroll down and hit Lost Cat, and then they all move down together. Alright, so my AC just kicked in, so I'm very sorry if you can hear that. Hopefully it's not too loud, but on my OBS it's not showing too crazy of noise, so I'm just gonna keep going. So the next part I'm gonna be doing is adding this bar right here. A lot of sites have a bar like this just to display like other links that you couldn't include in the header, like basic navigation or like members of the month or just site updates, which is totally fine. WeCode has something like this. Go to wecode.jc.net. That is actually this right here, where we display our staff instead of in the header because I didn't want to put them in the header. But we have our links right here, announcements, a link to what would be the site event of the month, which I haven't gotten around to doing it, but I promise it's going to come eventually. So that's what's going to be going in this area, and I will teach you how to make that. Basically, what you're going to be doing is pretty much the same thing that you did to create this box, this container right here. So you're going to hold this down, go back to your rectangle tool, make sure that is the same size. When I'm doing the mock-up, I don't like to always create brand new shapes every single time when I can just recycle shapes and sizes. So I know it's going to be the same design as the container for this, and I know it's going to be the same width. So what I'm going to do is open the header, go to header container, click on it, press Control J, move it to the very top, close the header, and then drag that down while holding shift so that I know that they are aligned and I know they're the same shape and the same width. So now if I want to define a size, I can change this to like 100, which I think is a bit too small because you have to include padding in that, and you just want to make sure that there's enough space. On the mock-up, what size is that? I'm gonna have to look for that, aren't I? Because I did not organize this very well. All right, perfect. It's this. All right, so it's going to be 160, which I think is a pretty decent size. So just go up here, change this to 160. And if you have any trouble seeing that, hit the indexing layer, hit the index folder, press shift, just scroll up. And then move the top bar to the top, which is how it will look. That way, you can simulate scrolling. Now, I don't want to move it too, oops, not that index. I don't want to move it too far up. Just want to make sure I can see everything. That's totally fine. I'll reopen the index. Now, you can pretty much do whatever you want with this, style it any way you want. As you saw, the one on WeCode looked totally different from my mock-up that I already made here. But I'm pretty much just going to show you what I made in my mock-up. You don't have to do the exact same thing. I highly, highly, highly encourage you to come up with your own layout or design, just because I think it's cool for people to express themselves, come up with their own ideas. I think it really helps to push you to be able to do different things in the future, so that going forward, all your skins don't just look generic and the same. So for this, I'm going to be doing, again, because I already created these shapes, and they're rounded rectangles with a radius of 10 pixels, I'm going to make it look the same because it's nice to have that consistency. It makes your skin look like it goes together. So, just going to hold shift and drag that out. That looks fine. And make sure it's that nice green color. Let's see what size I made it here, because I think I liked this size actually. And it's 50 by 50. That's fine. Change this to 50. Alright. And then drag this down to make sure it's right here. It's going to be called the navigation. Double click this to change the color and make it a bit darker because I think that fits a lot better. Perfect, perfect. And then Control J, Shift, drag it down. Control J, Shift, drag it right. Control J, drag it up. And they look great. Now, new folder, drag them all together. We'll call this links. And then Shift and Shift. And then make them align vertically. Make sure the spacing is good to the left as well. Now, I didn't create a square for this, which is totally fine. You can totally do that if you want to, but if you're feeling a bit lazy, like I usually am, I just hold this, go to the line tool, hold shift when you drag it straight down, and it'll create a straight line. Make sure this color is the same as this color, which I think is D8. Yep. And then move it until it's a pretty good space, just like that, and it'll simulate a line for you. Yeah, that's pretty much all I created for this. This one looks obviously slightly different when you click through them. I made a few changes, did a bit of resizing, but you pretty much get the entire process of what I go through when I create my mock-ups, or my prototypes. This is my initial mock-up, just to get a feel for like the size of everything. This is what I want it to look like when I start coding it. So usually after this initial part, I start coding, or I already know, I guess, kind of the flow that I want it to follow. So then I can start creating like the profile, the posts, and the mini profile, and the statistics, and the index section. So So I highly, highly, highly recommend you do that as well. You don't have to do that all in one sitting. I know sometimes it takes me like, I think once it took me like 3 months to actually get something that I liked. And I was like, oh, okay, I can do this. But sometimes I can do it overnight. And it's just whatever mood you're in, whatever. If the creative juices are flowing, go ahead and make them. It's a lot of fun. I have way more mock-ups than actual skins I have made, just because I honestly really enjoy making mock-ups. I love designing. I have a lot of fun coloring images and just creating things like this. So I highly recommend you do this in your free time, even if you don't plan on coding, just because I think it's great practice for you. And the things you can do with graphics is a lot easier than what you can do with coding. So, reach for the stars or whatever. For this section, you can add whatever you want. I'm gonna end this here just because I know I've been rambling for probably like 2 hours now, and I mostly just want to end this video. And that's all I had for my basic mockup anyway. So yeah, thanks for watching this video. If you have any suggestions, please post it in the Discord. I'm totally open to hearing them. I will be creating more videos in the future based on your requests, and some of you have requested that I actually start streaming, so we'll see how that goes. That probably won't happen until we do a bit more coding on this, just to free up some time for us. I will ping all people with the ping roll whenever I do post videos, or if I do decide to actually start streaming about this, just so you guys are all aware. So if you're interested in that, go to the Rolls channel and make sure you have yourself added to the ping roll so that you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching, and I really hope that you guys enjoyed this, and I hope that this was very helpful for you. I highly recommend using Photoshop if you can get it. And okay, I'm gonna stop talking now, I swear. Drink lots of water. Goodbye.